which side you're on.
A side should always be taken. Even if it's the wrong side.
The Lightfall We Never Got. The game that fans speculated had some tampering. You may have heard the rumors, you may be familiar with the stories, but you may still find yourself enjoying the current gameplay of Lightfall the way it is. And you're not alone. The most confusing story elements in Lightfall also strike a stark contrast to the most foundational gameplay Destiny has seen in years. It's a confusing mess, but what could have been has become filler on top of animosity towards Bungie. So how did it all go wrong? Why did this happen? And was Lightfall as horrendous as the less than 30% positive reviews on Steam say? Tinfoil hats needed for some of this, and please be ready for spoilers.
Today we're testing out to see how strong G-Sub's new flavor, Red Raz, is. Today we have a driver with us ready to help. Hello. Ladies and gentlemen, let the test begin. First things first, we're gonna try our competitors. This isn't good. Let's give it a shot. As you can see here, chalky, gross, nasty. Doesn't even taste good. Now, we're gonna try G-Subs, especially Red Raz, using code EVAN at checkout. For 0 calories, no bullshit, full nutrition, keto-friendly, diabetic-friendly, 0 on the glycemic index, everything, cheap price, use code EVAN. All right, driver, go ahead. And just like that, ladies and gentlemen, that was perfect. And that right there is why you use code EVAN at checkout. I'll see you next time.
Our story left off in the Witch Queen's Season of the Seraph, ending in tragedy for the AI Warmind Rasputin, who made a heroic sacrifice that would excel the pacing and tone headed into Lightfall. The expectation was for our end to be met. It was all over the advertisement that this was going to be the Witness and the Traveler's game, and we were going to be pawns. Originally in 2020, the promotional material of Lightfall was grim, clearly marking the end of the story, but it was a working title at the time. The promotional material for Lightfall would then change after Bungie announced that Lightfall wasn't the end. In fact, Final Shape was the end of the first saga.
Following expansion, Lightfall.
And now we're excited to announce the release after Lightfall, the final chapter in the Light and Darkness saga, Destiny 2, the Final Shape. It's going to be one wild, continuous ride.
It was clear that Bungie saw how well Destiny was selling this late into the franchise, and even more clear that players from long ago would stick it out until the end of at least this 10-year journey, so they wanted to keep the game rolling. Bungie also takes heavy inspiration from Marvel's cinematic universe, and Lightfall was going to be the Destiny take on Infinity War. It's also important to note that the community sentiment was not positive going into Lightfall, as Bungie's Year of the Witch Queen's seasonal stories and activities fell flat. It was an under-delivery of what had already been lower expectations from the years of the triumphant Forsaken. Bungie would be quoted by saying that over-delivery will be the death of your company. And while their quotes can have some truth to it, it's important to note that the content was already less than years before, with seemingly no interest in making special moments that fueled the years prior, all the while raising the price of the DLC. Witch Queen is a DLC that I described as making the game worse, and although a lot of the seasonal model had to do with this, and the apathy Bungie had created by clearly telling their player base that the game would get less and less, with more and more bugs shipped to get it out, rather than control what they already had released. They also didn't mention that they were going to charge more each time. It was my mistake to pin the beginning of the Witch Queen for this. The beginning was studio greatness achieved in character writing, fluid story beats, and a true new campaign experience for Destiny. Even more my fault is not realizing where most players end their time with Destiny. See, even if the gameplay felt missing and elements didn't work as well as they could have, for a lot of players they don't engage with the endgame of Destiny. A boss that I have seen and mechanics that I have experienced in a better way is nothing new or ambitious to me, but to most who play the Witch Queen's campaign, it definitely was. I don't want to sound like I'm talking down to others, but I didn't realize how different of an experience the day-to-day player receives with Destiny. That won't stop my criticism from what I enjoy, however, and the veil was shortly lifted after a great opening, because once the honeymoon was over, everyone was frustrated with the core gameplay components. Veil is the appropriate word to bridge this into the story of Lightfall, however. And while I recommend you check out my review of the Witch Queen, I want to discuss how Lightfall suffers the exact opposite problems Witch Queen had, and it's why Destiny is a love-hate relationship. Can you guys please get both right? Before we get to the campaign and the narrative, I want to make my opinion very clear. Lightfall's story was a betrayal from the year of the Witch Queen, with laughably bad character writing, lack of cohesion, and clear rushing to get this thing out the door. The deluxe DLC asked for more from your wallet while asking you wait another year to get the outcome of the story in year 9 of 10 for this light and dark saga. It's like if you paid for your car ahead of time, but then there's bullet holes in the side of it with a blood stain in the back and a note that just reads, "I'm sure you have questions. Please submit a payment and in 1 year you may get them." It's a real shame that I can feel the same outcomes of the best shows in TV history happening here. Lost and Game of Thrones come to mind. These shows are just like the running marathon of TV that is Destiny's story, asking more to establish more mystery, to draw out more eyes to watch, for us to find out what drama can occur with our characters to get out of. But just like these TV shows, if a clear end with the right amount of pacing isn't in mind, you'd be better off not asking the questions at all. Keep that in mind and don't get surprised if you end up not feeling satisfied with the final shape's ending next year. In fact, Bungie might be having the same concerns, as the writing staff has been getting laid off recently. It could be unrelated, but it's still important. So let's do it. Let's dissect the story of Lightfall and talk about the spoilers. The Lightfall campaign starts off with a bang.
There are too many of them! They're everywhere!
Vanguard to all units. Keep the enemy away from the Traveler.
Pyramids surround the Traveler. Amanda Holiday goes down. The Witness shoots darkness and the Traveler shoots a terraform back, but it doesn't do much. The Witness is unfazed and spaghettifies some ghosts and guardians alike with the move of a finger, showing the immense and otherworldly power of this entity, which establishes this as the villain, since we don't see a lot of our villains in action. When the Witness stretches its hand out and touches the Traveler, it shows what can best be described as its consciousness and reveals Neomuna for some reason. A time skip or a vision happens, and Calus is called upon to deal with Neomuna. In this vision, we see a lot, including for a frame, the veil. We also see a tree, and there's a lot of light and dark themes, because the theme will get bashed over your head. Immediately, we have the stakes. A reason to go to Neomuna, a clear obstacle in Calus, and a bigger baddie that will force our end later into the campaign. But wait, we as the player have these stakes in mind, but I find it to be a weird jump that all of a sudden the character knows we have to go to Neptune, find Calus, and reach the veil. How did we know this when the Witness is the one that had the vision? Maybe someone smarter than me can help me out, but no mention of this veil was ever shown before, and not even in a retconned way. This was just never in the story. I lost count at how many times Veil is mentioned in the campaign. I'd imagine the Veil was something understood in the lead to the campaign, or at least expressed in more detail during the campaign. This is also where I believe Amanda Holiday was originally supposed to die instead of the seasonal storyline, because she gets shot out of space and she's very much human. Also, Crow's blood-curdling scream of Amanda is pretty indicative of this. Going back to the opening mission, we just bump into Osiris on his own mission. A man who is no longer a guardian, has no ghost or powers, but is just doing secret agent stuff, is able to tell us all we need to know about the campaign. In this mission, it's a lot of intro meeting enemies and mechanics you will face, but you're on a ship to reach Neomuna under Osiris's order, and this is when you hear Calus and see his ship for the first time. The other ship since Leviathan is, ours now. You fight through a space opera level battle and meet a new enemy in the Tormentor for the first time. You push through mechanics, learn that Calus and his shadows are primed to conquer, then Osiris jumps in a Cabal pod and you do too. As you land on Neomuna, you're met with the Cloud Striders, Neptune's defending Silver Surfers who do not get rezzed like us. If they die, there are no more revives. Nimbus and Rohan welcome you to Neomuna. Before we continue, I just want to say my 2 cents on Nimbus, since I feel like this is the Destiny community's weird hill to die on. Nimbus was odd, but not because of the voice actor like some are pinning it on. More that Nimbus makes no sense and is very tone deaf to the situation at hand. The end of the world is coming. You are a protector of the city, chosen to take on responsibility, and you don't have the sense of humor that works here. I've seen people bring up that Cade was the same way, but I don't remember people loving Cade in Vanilla Destiny 2. In fact, people hated Cade so much in Vanilla because he represented the state of the game, that they actively felt like he was a representation of Bungie's tone-deaf approach to what fans liked before. Bungie literally had the character shot in the head to begin Forsaken. No, scratch that. In the trailer for E3 2018. They quite literally killed the approach to the comedic character to bring Destiny back to its days of Destiny 1. How anyone thought that Nimbus was a good idea of a character this deep into the franchise sort of blows my mind. I say sort of because I get that Bungie was going for that comedic teenage character, the superhero character that needs to save the day and will learn eventually the Marvel formula, Spider-Man, Tony Stark, you get where I'm going with this. But it didn't land at all. Especially when we are way too invested in the Witness, we're way too invested in the Pyramids, the Traveler, and Calus to worry about Nimbus. Yeah, Nimbus is a bad character with some awful jokes, but we're not here to harp on that during the whole video, so I'm just getting my Nimbus criticism mostly out of the way now. After the meeting is when you're finally introduced to Strand, Destiny's next crazy super to join the lineup, and this is where Bungie excels. The DLC may not tell the best story, but goddamn it does tell the best gameplay. And they added the classic grapple hook, baby! Strand is an amazing subclass, but one that doesn't really mesh with the story of Lightfall. You're on Neomuna, a place where everyone has uploaded their minds to the Cloud Arc, this giant metaverse. All the people aren't here, yet Bungie called Neomuna the most lifelike destination they have ever made. Lightfall's campaign would follow a mission structure of introducing things we have never heard before as an immediate issue that every character was familiar with except for the player, to then never get answers. Mission 2 was all about veil this, veil that. Mission 3 was all about the radio mast. Oh, you don't know about the radio mast?
What are you?
An idiot sandwich.
Mission 3 had some memorable moments like the epic standoff between Calus and Keitel. Oh wait, that doesn't happen. She just says a few things and tells us to escape. Never mind. Mission 4 is an excuse to have the B plot progress because the Vex are trying to break into the Cloud Arc, but really it's just a gameplay excuse to go into a cool looking area and use Strand to beat the bricks off some Vex. Mission 5 is all about Osiris just acting out with very little character development to get him to this point. How he went from laid-back teacher to this impatient old man in the matter of 3 missions blows my mind. This is also where we get a very out-of-place cutscene that just outright explains Strand to the player through animation instead of gameplay. Right after this, we have the very cliche, he will die trope, since Rohan just says this.
I understand what's at stake, Lightbearer. Far better than you. Not all of us have lives to spare. Pain is not a hindrance. Simply reminds us we're still breathing. Still fighting.
And what do you know? Mission 6 explains what the radial mast is, and it makes no sense at all. It's a device that emits light while also suppressing light, or paracausal energy, which I hate the word paracausal at this point because it's the easiest cop-out of just saying it's above our understanding. Come on, man. It's Calus's key to reach the veil, I guess. The only way to beat it is to use the dark, aka strand, but I'm not sure if Bungie forgot that they gave us stasis 2 years ago, which is also darkness, so couldn't we just beat the radial mast like that?
Let me check. Yes.
Plot conveniences aside, the mission is cookie cutter and introduces another villain. Let's call this the C plot, Nezarec. You do fight a tormentor named after him. In a crazy, shocking revelation, Rohan dies because we just couldn't learn to control the light and dark with strand, even though we have been controlling light for 9 years and dark with stasis for 2 years, so it just doesn't make sense at all. But Rohan dies, and the only one crying is Nimbus, because the radio mast had to go, or else Calus was gonna break in and steal the veil. Calus does do the Red War Council thing and gets put in his place by Gaul, the witness. Strike time, because we need to push the C plot that you won't fight in the raid, and shocker, it's a really good strike this time around. It's not Picasso, but it's a lot better than I was expecting from the strike format these days. It has cool mechanics, a Sparrow section, and it's in the Tron-looking Vex network. The boss isn't anything new, and there still is no RPG boss loot that can make you look like a boss or shoot a weapon inspired by one, so nobody will be here unless they have to be, but it's a solid strike. The main reason you're here is so you can learn about Nezarec. Again, not the raid boss. After the strike, since the story at this point has no clue what it wants to be, we have, no joke, a rocky montage to learn Strand. This part has been flamed a lot of times by others, so we won't spend all day here, but it's weird because I feel like the goofiness that everybody criticizes overshadows this mission's gameplay. Ignore the story for a second and enjoy the mission, because this is Strand at its best. You fly around the section by section battle to progress, and go around in circles to fight a giant minotaur. I feel like had the whole campaign been like this, I would have enjoyed it a lot more. In fact, this has been my criticism for Bungie ever since the story took the center stage. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes, you just gotta embrace being a game first, because goddamn, you guys are great at making the game part. Save the TV for a show, and not for the game. Alright, final mission. Final mission? In true Destiny fashion, right when the story gets somewhere and begins to turn into an Elden Ring video, aka get good, it ends. We battle to storm Calus' shadows with Keitel helping along the way, and I haven't seen too many people talk about this, but this could have been one of the best character moments for Keitel and Calus. But instead, when Calus eventually breaks into the vault, Keitel says this.
I held them off as long as I could. Calus is coming for you. It's in your hands now, Guardian.
You didn't even try to stop him? No cutscene? This feels very rushed and phoned in. And what was the point of the radial mast if Calus was going to break in anyway? Why even have a cutscene of Keitel and Calus together earlier in the campaign if there's no battle or meeting between the two on screen in a proper cutscene? The closest we get is just a few lines off screen. In the dungeon to set up this story, Duality, we went into Calus's nightmares to see that his daughter was his biggest fear, aka the final boss. Yet nothing is done with this as payoff, and Calus is just a shallow character. The best Calus was in the dungeon. We are also just shown more questions because the veil is like an LSD trip aura, and the people responsible for withholding the strongest key to Destiny ever is the Ishtar Collective, who were on Venus in Vanilla Destiny 1 story, and we still know nothing about them. So what they had to do with this is, again, another mystery. The fight with Calus is okay, it's nothing special, and I just feel like Calus got done so dirty. He is a gluttonous character which no mechanic is even associated to. His weakness is his daughter, who doesn't help in the fight at all. He's a known liar who is able to win over others with gifts and his words, yet all he does is shoot you and then charge at you. You'd think after making him a featured part of many raids and also being a raid boss that he'd be a lot more fleshed out and pushed further than Savathun's fight even last year, an expansion on the campaign formula. But the fight is just the bare minimum. After this fight was over, I was convinced that Calus wasn't dead. But no, he is dead. And Nimbus fist bumps you, and Keitel joins the cutscene after he's dead. So yeah, this is just bad. It's just tone deaf. The final cutscene, shocker, is a teaser for another year of Destiny, with the weirdest series of events I think I have ever seen this game take.
We finally found you.
Get your ghost!
What's wrong, Osiris?
Get your ghost out of there!
Finality takes shape.
It's creating the link!
At long last.
Destroy it!
What just happened?
We just lost.
Zavala, come in.
I did not cut that or make any jokes with this. That's actually how it happens. The ghost gets possessed and somehow feeds the witness the veil's power. You're about to kill your own ghost when Nimbus jumps in for a sure sacrifice to save you, going out in a heroic death, exiting the story, but becoming the Cloud Strider Rohan always wanted. But no, the ghost doesn't get shot and Nimbus is completely fine. Then the witness opens the veil, I guess, and just walks in. Poof, campaign is over. I was so convinced we had more missions to do that I accidentally started doing the LMG quest, which was just the epilogue to the story, where we kept showing the same cutscenes of Rohan's grave. I don't care about this character because I had no time to get attached, and you showed me no reason that I should care. No stakes, no feeling. Anyways, you get the exotic eventually. Rohan still died for nothing since the radial mass plot was a waste of time. The end. This got me thinking of a world where the DLC was not rushed to make this yearly cycle of Destiny. In fact, this got me thinking of Destiny as an every 2-year game instead. Fans pointed out some inconsistencies that may have led to a pitiful story. You know, if Bife is mad about the story, you done goofed. So this next section of the video, we'll talk about these threads that fans found, and for fun, I tried my hand at rewriting the wrongs. I don't want to be a game dev backseat dummy here, but I do have a degree in writing for TV, and this is just for fun as a fan of Destiny. So please take the rewrites as nothing more than a fan for a fun experiment. And let me know what you guys think in the comments. Here we go. Players were pretty mad, understandably, and quickly the detectives came out with a thread painting connections between Lightfall and the new direction versus the probable old one. Strand is up first, with its symbols on the same chess piece featured in Witch Queen, and just the general idea of deep sight from the Witch Queen's campaign making more sense with Strand. The next major discovery was the opening cutscene and the closing one, since this shot of the blast doors and the helm can quickly be cut together as a connective piece of the same cinematic. It makes a lot of sense for the story we're given, and I know a lot of people want to blame the writers of Destiny, but they've proven they can make some of the best stories in gaming. What I believe is a lot more likely was that the pivots were made due to time crunches that made this story be the way it was. This is the first time since Forsaken that a Destiny DLC was delivered on time, meaning that they probably wanted to make some good impressions for their new boss and figured that they had enough to make a story. I don't want to use that as a shield for Bungie, because this story is not good, so don't get it twisted. I would also like to mention that Final Shape was announced last year for Destiny 2, way after Lightfall was announced. So that makes me think that the final shape would have taken all of Lightfall's interesting story elements. Another connection to Strand being in Witch Queen is in the names of the subclass abilities. And it could be pure coincidence, but none of these make sense related to Neomuna, but fit too perfectly for Savathun's throne world and for the Witch Queen. Strand has names like Unravel, Tangle, Suspend, Thread. It makes sense to the detective story that Witch Queen was trying to tell, unraveling a mystery, suspending disbelief of deep sight and other tricks that Savathun might pull, tangling the clues, etc. And on a more generic level, Strand fits the motif of green in the Witch Queen a whole lot better. I went back to the Witch Queen's campaign, and Strand fits here so much more in the open environments. You can see spots around the throne world with deep sight that look easy to grapple, instead of just using platforms that are only there for a limited time, or an incorporation of both. There is definitely some verticality in Neomuna, but there's also a good amount of verticality in the throne world. These discoveries, and maybe just a deep want for this new vision, can't seem to leave my brain alone, and have inspired me to write my own version, keeping general themes and motifs in mind, as well as the original plan to end with Lightfall. So, here's my version. The Witch Queen begins the same. Savathun tricked us into giving her the light, and a giant time skip is in order for us to track her down. Her memory is still wiped away, but she has had time to learn and master the light for her army. Using light, she essentially seals away any light advantage for her enemies. We learn this after we arrive in her throne world, and our abilities are all but useless to get past her obstacles. We use stasis to break through the first barrier, and learn more about something that may be able to stop her. We know that stasis, while powerful, won't be enough to get past the next set of obstacles, but we are able to find a map of a relic conveniently plopped out for us. We travel with the guidance of the suspicious Finch to Europa, and steal the relic for our use. Ikora, with the help of Eris, is able to use the relic to extract something we are only able to learn, Strand. By using small pieces of Strand, we unlock pieces of Savathun's throne world. With each puzzle and clue of Savathun's plan gathered, we become more comfortable with Strand, gaining more fragments of it. The player must learn different abilities of this new super to figure out how to defeat her, and every boss in the way is holding some sort of relic to be extracted to learn more about Strand. We learn through Finch after a boss fight about a worm familiar being out there. We find this to be a spot far away from the throne world. A quick trip to Fundament presents us with Savathun's worm that she stowed away before death. The worm is shown to Ikora in the Enclave, with the Darkness relic to have a reaction that gives the player visions. A mechanic better known as Deep Sight. There is a nightmare voice that is a clear tease to something we will see in every vision leading into the raid of Lightfall. But we're still on the topic of Witch Queen. With Deep Sight, we can go back to the throne world and do a pick your own path mission structure, whereby completing different Deep Sight obstacles and puzzles, we unlock Strand to its fullest. Throughout the campaign, unlocking an ability of Strand allows us to do a mission that we couldn't do before. The rest of the story falls in line to what we received before, but Finch is shown to be a spy set up by Savathun in case of emergency, and steals her old memories back by using Finch as a vessel to learn. Eventually, Savathun is defeated after we have acquired all of Strand, using it to channel the deep side of our knowledge of the real story of Darkness being the villain to her brain. She is killed, but it is quickly shown that she may just be in shock and alive. Finch gets crushed to death, and Amaru is still out there. Final cutscene plays out the same, but the only changes to the seasons we get are that Savathun leaves us messages in her memory every time Bungie gives us a Strand aspect or fragment in the following seasons. This way you can keep the theme of the Witch Queen alive every season and give you clear teases and a clearer path into next year. Every season at least 3 memories are given to highlight what is coming in Lightfall. Now we're on to Lightfall. Lightfall campaign starts with the same setup that we would have now. We have the Witness blowing up ships and being powerful. But this time, Amanda dies immediately. The Veil is used for the Witness to make a more powerful version of a Darkness army for his disciples. The Veil being used on the Traveler imprisons it, also rendering it weak. making us lose our light subclasses completely, and the campaign is used to get them back, but enhanced versions, aka the 3.0s, Witch Queen gave us in real time. Each light subclass becomes associated with a disciple of the Witness. Arc is entrusted to Aramis, Void is entrusted to Calus, and Solar is for Xivu Arath. Each of these bosses holds the key to get your returning supers, and can be completed in any order. Calus has void traps and mechanics, which we will need Keitel's help to defeat. In fact, she knows that her father is afraid of her, and you use mechanics in the Calus fight involving her knowledge of her father to defeat him. By the end, Calus is not dead, but ends up retreating, lost and confused, but still under the control of the Witness. And after defeating Calus, you've acquired Void 3.0. Mithrax is the key to defeat Aramis, since he knows her struggles and how to convince her to potentially turn against the Witness. By the end of her segment, she does turn on the Witness and makes a sacrifice for good after being basically irredeemable, dying in the process. Xivu Arath is the most hellbent and difficult of the bunch. She is almost impossibly difficult and doesn't plan on letting you fight her in the campaign, so you have to look elsewhere. Savathun is the only option, and although you cannot trust her, she hates her sister more than you, so you must work together to defeat the greater evil. You two at least weaken Xivu enough to steal back your light ability, Solar 3.0. Each of these villains have the Veil Army of Darkness from the Witness. By the end of the campaign, the Witness is not dead, but we do have our light and dark to work together to defeat him. By using both, we dive into the Traveler and the Veil, and by using these abilities in tandem to break through, we almost die. But we have a talk with an almost Avatar-like state. This unlocks the final super in the game, and by using this super, we have learned all we need to end the Light and Dark saga. The raid is in the epilogue, and we begin with 6 players immediately after we got our final super. The first boss of the raid is Calus, lost and confused, but under the control of the Witness. We kill him with a gift mechanic representing his gluttony and selfishness. We then venture to see Xivu Arath, but are ultimately stopped by the guidance of the Vex and the Taken, Nezarec. To defeat something we have never seen but only heard the nightmares of in the deep sight visions of Witch Queen, it makes sense that we would have to face our fears in the mechanic. After a battle, it's then on to Xivu Arath, who must be killed with trickery the way we learned from Savathun, who has been the only one to ever outsmart her sister. Using this trickery, we beat Xivu. Finally, we see the Witness in different forms, and a 3-encounter boss fight against different forms of the Witness ensues. By the end, we know the only way to fight light and dark is to have them work in tandem. So we use our newest abilities to suppress the Witness, but not kill him. So in the cutscene, we use our newest super to suppress the Witness, but not kill him, force it to be powerless, and balance its light and dark. The seasons to follow focus on a golden age of embracing both light and dark, with the player becoming the beacon of both, and it's used to bring back all Sunset content. The 9 tell us we have learned what we need, and we prepare for the next saga of Destiny. It's not perfect, but this is what I was able to come up with in a short time. What do you guys think? All I know is that Strand, 3.0s, Stasis, etc. have been the better parts of the roller coaster of story, so I don't want to go too far without talking to you guys about the gameplay. No matter what, it's clear to me that the Lightfall We Never Got would have focused on themes of loss, and we never feel this in the current story. But one thing about Destiny that is a huge curse and blessing is that it's a game, and not just a TV show. Video games are the most difficult medium because they just age, and every idea needs to be solid for something to maintain greatness. TV shows and movies are a story that we follow characters. Video games are told that way, but we also have to play as the character. We have to make interactable environments. We have to make the game feel like Batman. And Bungie absolutely nailed that part with Lightfall. The gameplay just speaks for itself.
Oh my gosh.
Or you gotta press your other direction button so you get closer.
The sandbox has never felt more inviting, and this is highlighted by the ease of the mod system and loadout system. It's not perfect. We're still missing mods that were sunset and loadouts that don't carry over different artifact perks, making you reset it. But god damn it, it's a nice feeling to make a loadout and not use a third-party site all the time. It's even better if you think about the possibilities the loadout system has opened up, especially in non-locked loadout activities. You can go from one to another without waiting forever. This is only made better when you combine the fact that champion mods are now tied to abilities in the game, and the UI lists all of this with the mod manager and more. This is great stuff, and the foundation that Armor 3.0 should have been built on. But I'm so happy to see this realized, and players can bask in what they ended up receiving on this end. I also feel like this could have been elevated more had Guardian ranks been a good idea. I don't know how Bungie thought the social credit system from Overwatch would fit into Destiny, but I think commendations is just a weird concept. The intended place for this was for random teams to leave compliments to each other, but it's just so artificial and pointless, especially when Guardian ranks, which need a bunch of accommodations, are completely pointless outside of a number, and before somebody comments, "That's to flex." That is what titles are for. So both of these are flexes without any cosmetic rewards in the armor department or the weapon department seems kind of pointless to me, and a waste of valuable time we could be using to wrap up the story or making more fun gameplay. So we have great gameplay, seasons that we will have to wait to see how they play out, Neomuna, which feels pretty lifeless, a story that is really bad. What's next? Oh yeah, the core activities and exotics. The exotics are par for the course amazing, and I love that Bungie listened to the feedback from Stasis and implemented Strand into the game flawlessly. We don't have to wait almost a year to use Strand weapons. We can get them now, and there are even Strand buffs in the activities, which is very much appreciated. Also appreciated is that the servers worked with no issues for the day one and the raid. Massive improvement for Destiny that I can't let slide without saying something. Strand exotics are to be seen more often, but I can't say I like the Titanfall 2 pistol. It just feels gimmicky and unoriginal, like so many Destiny exotics have avoided before. The Vex Caliber was dope, and it even was from a seasonal exotic mission. And I just like where the gameplay is going. But I feel like the story has an impossible task and holds back the gameplay so much. I used to want story in Destiny, but that was in the era of Forsaken where I felt the gameplay was peaking for a while. And now the story feels like it's bleeding into everything. I just want Bungie to be okay with taking risks on gameplay and sacrificing the story. 30th anniversary, they did just that, and all the weapons and activities benefited from it greatly. So do more of that. The core of the game is still not good. I don't know who is in charge of strikes, but I do not count Battlegrounds as traditional strikes when they are seasonal content. It just feels lazy. And even if Battlegrounds were to stay, since they are, they just miss the unique aspect of strikes. And no, I don't like what they've done to Lake of Shadows and the Arms Dealer. They just miss the unique aspects of strikes. I wish more attention was spent giving players what they actually want, which is strike-specific cosmetics or weapons that fit the theme of the strike, like they figured out 7 years ago, and then abandoned for no reason. My resent for strikes and core activities has really bled into apathy. And you can expect, if strikes don't get improved, a rise and fall video to join both Crucible, which is barely alive, and Gambit, which... Why are you even in the game, Gambit? It's just downright embarrassing to see what has happened to the best parts of the experience in Destiny. And it really shows that when people are done with the new content in the game, they want something to do and to grind for, but there is nothing. Speaking of that grind, I know it's an infinite issue where you're always going to want to grind something, but having some passive social fun with some people, or maybe something that you can play on your own like Strikes, Crucible, or Gambit, was always the lifeblood of Destiny. Speaking of the grind, Bungie did good on the leveling this time around. No, they didn't make a new leveling system, like they definitely should. But they did understand that the current one is boring and old. So they made one pinnacle cap for the entire year. And They don't force you to reach it to play the endgame content. Grandmasters can be accessed once you hit a certain level, not having to max out your level to play them, and the difficulty will scale to your level. There's still some inconsistencies and some horrendous balancing with the difficulty in the game, but I have a feeling they'll sort this out. Now, I would like to get into what I believe is another case of the what ifs. The raid, Root of Nightmares, it was an anomaly. Being an easier raid than what we've seen in years. Contest was cleared first in 2 hours and 25 minutes, but the story goes further than that. This was the first raid with multiple encounters soloed on Contest. You even got data ranting about it. Even worse, and although I love that players are bossing up and pulling this off, was the fact that every single encounter has been beaten solo and without bugs like other raids. All this took was the right builds and every boss got decimated. I saw a lot of people talking about this being a dungeon, and I don't agree. Rolk and Val the Disciple felt like a satisfying progression of story. There's a new environment in the pyramid for a raid, there's even mechanics that have taken raiding a step further, and a final boss that was a true new enemy to Destiny. On top of this, Val the Disciple's prophecy board told us every indicator we needed as players to get ready to lose in Lightfall. We are in our enemy's pyramid, and yet we learn nothing about the Witness or the Veil. Unless you subscribe! No post-raid activity to investigate the Witness pyramid to learn more about our enemy. Nope. Just kill the boss, people are safe in the city, life is chill, and moves on. With this information, we fight a boss, Nezarec, who tells us that Savathun had him killed. Yes, and that the light of the Traveler brought him back to life. And yeah, that is important for the final shape to know that, since Savathun is probably still alive, just chilling on a beach somewhere. But don't we already know this info on how light works from Savathun being brought back from the dead with light? We didn't have any lead into the next big moment in Destiny like Deepstone Crypt's Clovis Bray gave us, and Rolk gave us with Val the Disciple, leading people to call this raid just plain filler. Can you blame them? No, you cannot, when we have 1 year left to wrap up so many storylines. And it leads me to my conclusion with Root of Nightmares. This was a raid made in a quick turnaround time, probably by a newer team than normal. Is this a bad raid? Nah, I mean, it's fine. It's still a raid. It's about mid all around. Is it a great raid? No, not for me. But I don't think it's a dungeon. If anything, this goes to show me that Destiny is going to have a Game of Thrones or Lost type of finale. All the questions that you have and build for no payoff. It's a shame too, because I think Nezarec could have made for a sweet final boss. He still looks cool and has some neat attacks. I'm just a bit sad. So with all we've discussed and how far Lightfall fell from its probable original ideas, the question you might have is, why did Bungie do this when it seems at least surface level like they could have had it figured out? Why pivot? Marco Style made probably the most sense in his argument for Destiny and live service games. You need the right people who understand the right vision, and you need to turn the content around quickly while also satisfying enough people to keep them around. AKA making a live service game is hard. Bungie can hire and hire and hire more and more people, but at the end of the day, what you have in front of you and done will make or break your live service. I would imagine that Strand was not ready for Witch Queen without some severe delays, and Bungie did know from Stasis that shipping a super that's not done is bad for the game, so they instead threw together an unfinished version of the 3.0s that we saw in the seasonal content that broke Witch Queen, while implementing changes that would make the core experience of Lightfall much better. Aside from airborne effectiveness and skill-based matchmaking, those were just bad changes. Void 3.0 was probably made first, and it's why it had the least amount of issues for PvP and PvE balance. But Solar 3.0 and Arc 3.0 came out busted. I do think that with the Sony money that Bungie has now, players are holding the company in very high criticism, because before the community sentiment was focused on them being an indie studio. But now that you have all the money and people in place, you're on your final year, and Bungie, they're gonna have to race to the finish. So that brings me to my conclusion. Lightfall was a rush DLC. with gameplay that was a beautiful chef's kiss, while Witch Queen was a great story with stale gameplay and poor seasons. And now it all makes so much sense, at least in the theories provided. You see, this video has been about the Lightfall we never got, but truthfully, it should be called the mix and mashing to make live service games come out every year. This model feels like it's holding back the delivery of making a special game with an even more special story. And it's why I think Destiny will be playing catch up in the final shape. Will the DLC be finished? Maybe. Will we all be standing by hoping for all the answers? Well, absolutely. But don't think I didn't warn you that you're not going to get all your answers, at least not in a satisfying way. Was Lightfall bad? The game was refreshing. The show was rushed, and it suffered from that. I guess this means that Bungie has a hill to climb, but they did nail the part that makes me keep coming back, and that part made me stick with vanilla Destiny 1 to begin with. But you guys make your own decisions. Just don't say you weren't warned. I'll see you guys in the next video.